What if $60 billion vanished from your country and nobody told you? What if the proof slept in a schoolteacher's drawer while strangers grew rich by the hour? What if one woman, one folder, one quiet village took it all back? No bullets, no sirens, just courage. This isn't fiction. This is Burkina Faso. And the truth just stood up. Her name is Binta Kouyaté, retired teacher, soft voice, iron spine. In her hands, a faded yellow folder tied with string, maps drawn by a careful hand. Export logs that say one thing while the ports overseas say another. Shell companies with no doors, only mailboxes. Money trails bending through Luxembourg and islands that forget their own history. Ink that smells like earth. She boards a rattling taxi to Ouagadougou and walks into a lobby bright as noon. Crystal lights, cameras whispering, suits smiling, security pretending not to stare. A tall man in a royal blue suit points at Binta like she is a smudge on his shoe. "You don't belong here," he snaps. "This is for decision makers." Binta says nothing. She holds the folder tighter, and then a voice cuts the room in half. "That woman holds more power than you ever will." Heads turn. The red beret enters without a trumpet. Ibrahim Traoré does not raise his voice. He doesn't need to. He steps between Binta and the blue suit like a mountain stepping into a stream. "This is our country," he says, "and what was taken ends today." Binta opens the folder, a single page on heavy paper, across the top one red word. Revocation. Cameras click. The blue suit tries to smile and can't find his mouth. "You'll destroy investor confidence," he sputters. "Your economy depends on us." Traoré doesn't blink. "Your profit depends on us," he answers. "We are not for sale." Murmurs ripple the marble. Phones begin to buzz like angry bees. Someone whispers lawsuit. Someone else whispers sanctions. The room tastes like metal. "Fine," the blue suit says, finding a little boldness behind his cufflinks. "Take this to court." "We already did," Traoré replies. "And we're taking it to the people." He hands the page to a soldier who walks it straight to the press. The room inhales and forgets to exhale. "There is no partnership," Traoré says softly between a knife and a wound. Silence. Not the polite kind. The kind that knows a season just ended. Across town, a pen waits on a wooden desk. 8 pages. An order with teeth. Suspension of foreign mineral exports pending audit and legal review. One signature and the border posts become steel ribs. One signature and the airstrips go quiet. One signature and trucks with fake permits become statues on hot asphalt. A messenger leans in. "Sir," he whispers, "they're already moving the gold." Traoré looks at Binta's folder on the table. He uncaps the pen. At the southern checkpoint, the first truck grinds to a halt. Under rice sacks, something glints. At the airport, a helicopter meant for a mine executive waits for fuel that will not arrive. Back in the lobby, the blue suit finally understands what the word revocation feels like. The pen hovers over the line. Ink gathers at the tip. And then the pen touches the line. Ink breaks. The signature lands like a hammer. Executive order. Immediate suspension of foreign mineral exports. Pending audit and legal review. Across the capital, radios crackle alive by order of the president. At the southern checkpoint, the first truck shudders to a stop. Papers are waved. Seals look proper. The sergeant nods once, then lifts a rice sack. Under the grain, something bright. Raw bars. No markings. No receipts. He does not shout. He simply says, "Record the weight." The driver's mouth opens. No sound comes out. At the airport, a control tower clears its throat. Helicopters meant for mine executives sit with their noses to the glass waiting for fuel that will not arrive. "Ground them," the controller says. "All of them." In a warehouse outside the city, a foreman texts an executive in Paris. No reply. He texts again. No reply. He tries to call. The line rings once, twice, dies with a soft click. His hands shake as if winter just walked through the door. Back at the palace, the folder lies open on the table. The room is not crowded. It is focused. Captain Malik Diarra, broad shoulders, a jaw that forgot how to smile, stands over a map pinned with red thread. Known routes, suspected routes, shadow airstrips, he says. He taps a point near the border. Here first. Judge Sira Koulibaly, robes traded for a plain dress, speaks without raising her voice. Chain of custody. every seizure photographed, every crate tagged. We do this loud and legal. Idrissa and bioeconomist, wire rim glasses catching the light, slides a paper across the table. Projected flows this week alone, $170 million, 5 sites. That's without the off-book tonnage. Ibrahim Traoré listens like a mountain listens to wind. Then the wind changes, he says. Phones begin to hiss. Urgent clarification needed. Violation of mutual agreements. Investment at risk. The language is velvet. The meaning is muscle. Judge Sira reads each message to the end and sets it down with 2 fingers as if laying flowers on a grave. Reply after we file, she says, not before. In the lobby of the Horizon Continental, the man in the royal blue suit is still trying to locate his smile. Reporters circle like hawks who have learned patience. This is reckless, he says, to no one in particular. They will regret this. A cameraman lowers his lens. Sir, how many years did your company hold those rights? The blue suit adjusts his cufflink. He says nothing at all. Night leans over the city, but the country does not sleep. Border radios keep repeating the same sentence. By order of the president, old wooden gates become iron. Flashlights sweep under tarps. Pens scratch on clipboards that used to be ceremonial and are now weapons. At the northern post, a young officer stops a convoy of 3. The drivers know better than to argue. The officer cuts, a band opens a crate and stares. Inside, no tools, no medical supplies. Raw ore packed tight, dusting the breath of the men who loaded it. He closes the lid and writes a number that will outlive the night. In a different corner of the capital, a banker reads an email twice. The subject is simple: freeze. He looks at the passport in his drawer. He looks at the clock. He turns to the window and finds his reflection less certain than it used to be. Judge Sira files the first brief just before midnight. The African Union Court receives it with a soft chime that travels further than any siren. Exhibits attached forged signatures, fraudulent seals, ledgers in 2 alphabets telling 2 different truths. At the bottom, a name and a sentence. The Republic asserts its right to protect its wealth during an active fraud investigation. Idrissa exhales for the first time in hours. It's in, he says. Now we do the work, Traoré answers. The work does not look like speeches. It looks like soldiers counting in the dark. It looks like clerks stamping with clean hands. It looks like villagers standing on a hill above the highway, watching a line of trucks grow longer and longer, red taillights threading the night like beads. In a rented apartment far from the hotel, a man with a foreign passport opens a safe. He removes a leather notebook. On the first page, initials no one is supposed to say out loud. A second set of initials below and a date. He shuts the book and reaches for his phone. The signal is gone. He stares at the blank screen as if it has betrayed him personally. At dawn, the first official count reaches the palace. Southern checkpoint, 71 crates, 22 false permits, 1 driver who tried to run and did not get far. Northern checkpoint, 3 convoys intact. Eastern checkpoint, a helicopter attempted a lift. Denied. Captain Malik marks each report with a pin. The map starts to look like a sky full of red stars. Traoré nods to Judge Sira. The moment they say law, we hand them law. And if they say war, Malik asks. We give them patience, Traoré says, the kind that terrifies cowards. In a cramped newsroom, a young reporter opens an email from a soldier she has never met. Attached are photos that do not need captions. Bars laid out on a truck bed. A forged seal next to the real one, the difference obvious as a scar. A crate's false bottom pried open with a crowbar. She dials her editor. Run it. What do we title it, he asks. She thinks for a second. Call it The Night the Gold Stopped Moving. Across the ocean, a conference room with a view of a cold river fills with men who hold their coffee like shields. A compliance officer clears her throat. There is a filing in Addis, she says, and talk of a freeze order in Geneva. No one drinks. Someone wipes the rim of his cup with a napkin as if that will solve anything. Back at the southern checkpoint, the sergeant who lifted the first sack of rice lifts another. No gold this time. A ledger. Tight handwriting. Dates, weights, initials, ports. One entry has a symbol in the margin, a small triangle that points to a name. Not a company, a person. He turns the page and finds the same symbol again. And again, he makes the call. Captain, you should see this. Bring it, Malik says, carefully. The blue suit in the hotel finally decides to leave. He steps outside into air that no longer belongs to him. On the curb, his phone lights up with a single message from a number he does not recognize. "We need to talk, not here." He looks up. Across the street, a woman he has never noticed before closes a notebook and walks away. He pockets the phone and follows the tide of people toward cars that are not waiting for him. In the palace, the folder sits where Binta left it. The string is frayed, the corners are soft, it looks like nothing, it feels like everything. A clerk steps in with a stack of cables. "Sir," she says to Judge Sira, "they are threatening sanctions." Sira smiles without showing teeth. Then they have admitted fear. Malik enters with the checkpoint ledger in a sealed bag. "This is not just cargo," he says. "It is a map of the men who thought we would never read it." "How far does it reach?" Idrissa asks. Malik meets Traoré's eyes. "Further than our borders." Traoré nods once as if he has been expecting this reply since the day he first laced his boots. Then we keep walking. He turns the page of the ledger with gloved hands. On the margin, the small triangle appears again, pointing at a name he does not say out loud. He looks up at his team. "Find the account," he says. "Find the bank. And find the one person who can't sleep tonight." Outside, the morning breaks clean and bright over a line of trucks that will not move. Birds rise from the trees, like a decision being made. In the village where this began, Binta waters the school garden and does not look toward the road. She knows the road will come to her in time. Back in the city, a single email crosses a cold river to a quiet office. Subject: voluntary cooperation. No greeting, no signature, just one line. "I have what you need," and that is where we pause. Because someone who never planned to speak is about to pick up the phone. The email lands in a quiet office that smells like old paper and new fear. Subject line: voluntary cooperation. Body: "I have what you need." Her name is Fatou Doumbia. Compliance officer. Impeccable record. A face the cameras never learn. Born in West Africa. Built a career in Europe. She knows where the numbers sleep and how they wake. Judge Sira Coulibaly reads the message twice, then once aloud. "We go," she says. Binta wraps the yellow folder in a cloth and tucks it under her arm. Captain Malik travels light eyes, scanning doors that do not look dangerous until they are. Idrissa brings a ledger of questions and a pencil he sharpens too often. Geneva is glass and quiet. Meetings that pretend to be accidents. Smiles that forget the eyes. Fatou sits at the end of a narrow table in a room without windows. She does not bother with small talk. She slides a small silver drive across the wood. No password, no flourish. 30 years, she says. Transfers, shell companies, internal memos, the ports that lied, the ports that looked away. Judge Sira's hands do not tremble. "Why now?" she asks. Fatou's voice is calm and tired. "Because I remembered my mother's voice. And because I slept badly for 10 years. She nods toward Binta's folder. "He made me rich," she says, meaning the man in the royal blue suit. "But women like her make me proud." They sign a statement with enough weight to hold in court. They walk the drive to a door with a badge reader and a man who speaks in clipped syllables. A temporary order begins to take shape. Not a headline, not a speech. A hold. Accounts named. Entities listed. Transfers paused. Across a cold river, phones begin to vibrate out of rhythm. A boardroom stares at a wall of frozen balances like fishermen staring at a frozen lake. Someone whispers the word exposure as if it were a sin and not a forecast. In Ouagadougou, the team files the addendum to the African Union case before noon. Exhibits attach the drive, the maps, the double books, the matching shipments that do not match at all. The clerk at the counter does not know she is touching history. She stamps the receipt like she always does. Even pressure. Clean ink. A cable arrives within the hour. A foreign block warns of consequences. The words are velvet again. The meaning is old. Judge Sira writes 4 sentences in reply. Law cited. Evidence summarized. Sovereignty affirmed. She signs her name with a dot that looks like a full stop. Captain Malik returns to the map. Red pins mark seizures. Blue pins mark airstrips. A thin line in pencil snakes through a district nobody ever talks about because no one with a suit goes there. A tip came in from a quiet man who used to wear a uniform. Malik circles the spot and presses the paper with his thumb. Here, he says. By evening, a brief goes out from Geneva that reads like a warning and acts like a break. Temporary freeze. Subject to review. Effective immediately on accounts connected to the listed entities. The blue suit finally has a name on our page, Lucien Marot, but legal knows better than to say it on television. In private, his attorneys spell it out, letter by letter, as if each vowel might offer mercy. Binta stands by the palace window with the folder held against her ribs. She watches the sun slide down the buildings and thinks of the school garden, of roots needing room to breathe, of children who ask why grown-ups make rules that hurt. Idrissa totals the week's prevented losses on a pad. He stops at a number that feels like disbelief and checks it again. Then he says what the room is thinking. We were never poor, he murmurs. We were robbed. Silence, then nods. A message pings on Malik's phone, a single line from a scout sent to the pencil circle on the map. Captain, you need to see this yourself. How bad? Malik replies. The answer takes 6 seconds, worse than money. He looks up. The room notices the change in his face. I need a small team, he says. Plain clothes, no noise. Traoré does not hesitate. Take what you need. They move before dawn. No lights, no sirens. Just gravel under tires and a road that narrows until it is the width of a decision. A faded sign waits on a wall at the end of the trek. Words about children. Words about protection. Fresh paint over old lies. Malik steps through the gate and into a silence that does not feel empty. Bunk beds the size of a heartbreak. Tiny shoes in a row. A storage room with crates that should hold food and hold ore instead. A notebook on the floor with drawings of a ball, a sun, a house with no door. He lifts a ledger from a shelf. Same hand as the checkpoint book. Same triangle in the margin. But next to the triangle, not a company. First names, ages, 6, 7, 8. He closes the ledger as if closing a wound. Back at the palace, a phone begins to ring. Judge Sira answers on the second tone. Yes, Malik's voice is steady but not the same. Judge, he says, we found a charity. And something else. What else? A crime with no accounting term. The line goes quiet for one breath. Bring everything, she says. And bring a doctor. In Geneva, a light turns on in an office that never sleeps. A woman who learned to avoid eye contact looks down at her desk and thinks about a train station a continent away. She closes her eyes and presses send on a document she once swore she would never write. In Ouagadougou, Binta sits with the folder open to the first page. The string lies beside it, frayed and honest. She does not cry. She has work to do. Across town, a newsroom receives a message from a source it does not know yet. 3 photos, no captions. A 4th blurred of a list of first names and ages. The editor breathes out long and slow. Hold the story, he says. We wait for the government to say it first. He deletes the draft headline and starts a new one. Then he stops because even headlines need evidence. And that is where we pause. Because when theft touches children, anger grows a different voice. And the next sound you hear will not be a gavel or a siren or a speech. It will be a country saying, enough. They bring the ledger, the crates, and 3 small survivors. No ceremony, no sirens. A doorway opens. A doctor kneels. A social worker wraps a blanket around a boy who will not let go of a cloth bag. Inside the bag are stones he picked from the dirt. He believes more stones might buy his sister back. No one corrects him. Not yet. Captain Malik lays the evidence on a long table. Photographs. The ledger with the same careful hand. The same small triangle in the margin pointing not to companies, but to first names and ages. 6, 7, 8. Judge Sira reads in silence. When she finishes, she closes the book with both palms. This goes to the people, she says. By noon, the press hall is full, but the room is quiet like church before the first hymn. Binta stands in the front row with the yellow folder pressed to her chest. Ibrahim Traoré steps to the lectern and does not shuffle his papers. He looks at the room as if it belongs to the people who paid for its lights. We have seized gold, he says. Today, we seize the truth. He does not raise his voice. He does not need to. We found a compound that called itself a charity, he continues. We found ore where food should have been. We found ledgers that count children like cargo. We found proof that the theft of our wealth was not enough for them. They tried to take our future also. A screen lights behind him. One photo, a crate with a false bottom pried open. No captions, no drama, just the fact. Traoré lets the silence do what it came to do. Then he speaks again. Let every partner hear me plainly. We are not anti-West. We are anti-theft. If you trade fairly, you are welcome. If you hide lies under the names of children, your time has ended. Journalists who came for a quote find themselves holding their breath. Pens stop moving. Cameras do not blink. Across the city, televisions in barbershops and kitchens fall silent. In villages, people gather under trees where elders usually tell stories at dusk. Today, the tree listens. Judge Sira steps forward. Effective immediately, she says, all foreign charities operating near extraction zones will undergo emergency review. Licenses without full audits are revoked. Surprise inspections begin tonight. Warrants are signed. She lifts a second document. We are filing additional counts with the African Union Court and notifying the relevant authorities abroad. Names are named. Accounts are listed. We will not speak everything in public, but the law will. Captain Malik speaks last. We don't need speeches, he says. We need names. We need trails. We need the last door on the last corridor. We are going to find it. Across town, the newsroom that held its headline finally presses publish. Children, not cargo. The story goes live. It does not trend. It moves like thunder under soil. In the markets, mothers pull their shawls tight and stand still with their heads high. In the mosques and the churches, prayers change shape. In schoolyards, teachers draw two circles on the board, one for lies, one for truth, and ask the children where the country should live. The diaspora hears it before the evening news can translate it. Phones in Atlanta, Chicago, Baltimore light up with the same link from cousins and classmates. A grandmother in Detroit sits forward in her chair and says a name she has not said since the day she left home. She calls her church friend and says, "Turn on the stream." A deacon in Brooklyn whispers, "Not the babies," and his voice hardens in the middle. By late afternoon, the first foreign statement lands like a velvet glove with a rock inside. Grave concern, it says. Unilateral actions, potential sanctions. Judge Sira underlines one sentence with a calm pen and writes two words in the margin. Show receipts. She dictates a reply with the discipline of a surgeon. Temporary seizure during active fraud investigation is recognized under international law, she says. Evidence attached. Chain of custody intact. Sovereign duty invoked. 4 sentences. No adjectives. Ink that refuses to tremble. Binta leaves the press hall and does not go home. She walks to the National Museum and stands in a quiet corner where school children line up for field trips they cannot imagine yet. She is not waiting for anyone. She is making a promise to the space itself. At the checkpoint, the work continues. The sergeant who lifted the first sack of rice opens another crate and finds a ledger sewn into the lining of a tarpaulin. He smiles a tired smile that looks a little like victory. At the palace, Idrissa adds the new totals. Numbers that used to mock the country now stand in a column labeled returned and another labeled prevented. He circles a figure and shakes his head. They told us to ask for aid, he says. They never told us how much we already had. In Geneva, a door closes with a soft seal. Fatou Doumbia breathes through her nose and signs another affidavit. The clerk on the other side of the glass swallows when he reads the list of entities. A senior banker rubs his temple and says, "We should have listened 3 years ago." That night, state television gives the floor to the names. No commentary, no soundtrack, just a voice reading. Children first, because that is how any honest country counts. The voice reads slowly, as if refusing to hurry the dead. When the list ends, the anchor lifts her eyes. "We honor them," she says. "We will not forget them, and we will not let them be used again." An old argument loses its power in a single evening. The one that says a nation cannot stand up to the men in blue suits. The one that says courts are not for the poor. The one that says the rich make the rules, not tonight. The next morning, the foreign bloc sharpens its letter. Immediate sanctions it threatens. Trade restrictions. Banking limitations. The language wears perfume but carries a blade. The cabinet gathers before sunrise. No one talks about politics. They talk about medicine stockpiles, fuel reserves, food routes. Captain Malik circles a section of the map with his finger. If they squeeze the ports, we can still move through here, he says, slow but clean. Judge Sira opens a weathered law book and turns to a page already creased. She reads a precedent that says, a state may secure disputed wealth during an investigation if it can show harm and show proof. We can show both, she says, and more. Will it hold, someone asks. It will if we hold, she answers. Traoré looks around the table. His eyes touch each face the way a father checks a door before turning off the porch light. We do not blink, he says. We do not beg. We do not boast. He signs the reply. The letter does not shout. It stands. Across the ocean, a closed-door council meets in a room that loves the word consensus. Someone says, we cannot look colonial. Another says, they have the paperwork. A third says, wait, watch. The blade goes back in its sleeve. Not forever. For now. At sunset, crowds gather without a script. Not to riot, to witness. Candles bloom along sidewalks and in the dusty squares of villages where candles are precious. Men who never cry let their eyes do the work. Women who have cried too long lift their chins and stop. A singer brings a drum. The rhythm is slow and steady, like a heart choosing to continue. Between the beats, someone starts a call and the crowd answers. Who owns the ground? The people. Who writes the law? The people. Who counts the children? The people. Who keeps the gold? The people. Binta stands at the edge and listens. For the first time since the envelope arrived, her shoulders drop. She is not lighter. She is steadier. At the checkpoints, night shifts trade places with day shifts. No one complains. There is coffee strong enough to stand a spoon and bread broken in halves that taste better than feasts used to taste. In a hallway that does not host cameras, Traoré stops beside a photograph of his country from long before he was born. Rivers like veins, mountains like knuckles, villages like constellations. He places his palm on the frame and speaks so low only the photograph can hear. We are returning you to yourself. He turns when a clerk approaches with a cable. Sir, she says, the freeze order held, and there is a second message. He reads the second message. 4 words. We can identify the pilot. Captain Malik closes his fist and opens it again. Then the airstrip has a name, he says. Judge Sira's pen is already moving. Then the warrant has a place. Idrissa folds the latest totals into a smaller number. Then the hospitals have a budget. Binta looks down at the yellow folder. The string is gone. The pages are worn. It looks like a life that has been used properly. She ties the folder with a new ribbon someone found in a drawer and sets it gently into a satchel that will not leave her side. We are almost at the point where men who thought they were untouchable start to run. You can hear it if you listen. The rustle of boarding passes, the scratch of shredders, the whispering inside rooms with too much glass. But before the running, there is a knock on a door in a city that hides its nerves under perfect sidewalks. A knock that no one expects at that hour. A woman opens it. She looks at the badge, then at the small silver drive on her table, then at her own hands. Are you ready to make this official? The visitor asks. She nods once. I am. And far away on a runway where money usually moves faster than mercy, a jet engine coughs, then chokes, then goes quiet. The map of money just grew a face. And the next chapter will ask it to speak its name. The woman at the door signs her name. A sworn statement, a chain of files. The small silver drive sealed in an evidence bag that suddenly feels heavier than metal. Her voice is steady when she repeats the facts, dates, accounts, transfers. The company chart that looks like a tree with no leaves, only shadows. By noon, regulators on 2 continents have the same folder number. A freeze order moves from screen to screen, polite in its language and ruthless in its effect. Balances lock, cards stop. The money that used to move faster than truth slows down to the pace of paper. In Ouagadougou, Judge Sira Coulibaly sends 3 letters in 3 directions. Mutual legal assistance, witness protection, asset recovery. No rhetoric, no thunder, only law walking in a straight line. Captain Malik diagrams a network on the wall, names at the edges, a few at the center. The triangle symbol from the ledgers points the same way every time, toward a suite in Geneva with a view of a river that hides nothing today. The man in the royal blue suit arrives at a private terminal before dawn, passport ready. An attorney 2 steps behind. He does not look back. He should. 2 officers wait at the glass door. They are not aggressive. They are exact. "Sir, we need to ask you a few questions." The attorney starts a sentence about misunderstanding. It does not finish. A folder opens. Copies of transfers, export logs that disagree with themselves, a list of names that are not companies. The man in blue frowns deeper with every page. His signature appears more times than he remembers signing it. The pen in the photo is his. The cufflink in the photo is his. The date lines up with a shipment that vanished between a border post and a port that swears it never saw it. "Please come with us," the officer says. He does. Across town, a bank boardroom goes still. Compliance reads the freeze order aloud. Legal clears a throat and asks about exposure. No one says the word guilty. They say the word documents. They say it many times. In Addis Ababa, an emergency session fills before the coffee cools. Delegates take their seats in a chamber that remembers every promise ever made inside it. Ibrahim Traoré steps to the podium without papers. He does not need them. For years, he says they told us our silence was consent. We were not silent, we were gagged. He lifts a single page, an export log. 1 ton declared, 3 tons received in Geneva the same month. He sets it down. They told us we were too poor. We were not poor. We were robbed. He lifts a second page, a ledger with the small triangle in the margin. Next to it, a child's first name, a number for an age. He sets it down. We will trade with partners. We will not kneel to thieves. The chamber answers like a choir that knows the song before the first note. A motion rises. An audit across member states. A task force on restitution. A vote that does not whisper. It stands and speaks. Back in Ouagadougou, the newsroom publishes the resolution as fast as fingers can move. The headline is not poetic, it is a map. Africa will count its own. At the palace, Idrissa runs new projections. Hospitals, schools, rail, a number for clean water that used to live in a dream and now has a line in a budget. He does not smile. He breathes. A cable from Europe arrives with the perfume of power. Grave concern. Possible sanctions, review of relations. Judge Sira circles a clause and writes a short reply. Temporary seizure during fraud investigation. State sovereignty. Harm established. Evidence attached. She signs her name with a period that ends a paragraph and begins a new one. In Geneva, an interview room hums softly with the kind of light that keeps people awake. The blue suit tries to grow a spine. He talks about stability and partners and how the market hates surprises. Markets hate crime more, the investigator says. A clerk sets a glass of water on the table and does not meet his eyes. She has read the list of first names, the ages. She will not forget them when she goes home. Outside, the woman who turned the key this morning stands alone and counts her regrets. She does not cry. She texts a single word to Judge Sira. Filed. In Ouagadougou, the press office hits send on a statement with no adjectives. Charges referred, warrants active, coordination ongoing. The country does not gloat. It exhales. Diaspora phones tremble again. In Detroit, a grandmother says, "Say the name right." In Atlanta, a barber turns up the volume and cuts a line so sharp it looks like resolve. In Baltimore, a deacon folds his hands and says, "Let it be done clean." At the southern checkpoint, the sergeant who lifted the rice sacks now lifts a pen. He signs a receipt for seized assets, the way a man signs a birth certificate, carefully, knowing it will matter in 10 years. Night falls. The city glows the way cities do when they decide to outlast fear. The palace lights are not brighter, they are steadier. Traoré walks a quiet hallway and stops at a map of the country, the old kind on canvas. He traces a road with one finger the path from a village to the capital. He does not speak. He does not need to. The map answers by existing. A clerk brings a note, 4 words. The accounts are frozen. He nods. Another note follows, 3 words. He is in custody. He folds both slips once and puts them in his pocket the way a man keeps a promise where he can feel it. Judge Sira gathers the team. "We move to recovery," she says. "No leaks, no lapses." Idrissa nods. "We put the first money where the first hurt lives." Captain Malik says nothing. He points to a final line on the network board. An arrow that leaves Geneva crosses water and lands in a place the map calls offshore, as if that were a name and not an excuse. Can we reach it? Idrissa asks. We will, Malik says, because someone on that island sleeps badly tonight. In a village where this began, Binta lights a lamp and opens the yellow folder one more time. The string is new, the corners are old, the pages smell like dust and courage. She copies one sentence onto clean paper in her neat teacher's hand. We were never poor. We were robbed. She sets the copy aside for her students, the ones who will learn to read the world, as if it were a ledger and a poem at once. Across the ocean, a tarmac receives a plane that was not on the morning schedule. The landing lights touch down like fingertips on a drum. The cargo door opens. A crate with a seal that used to mean silence rolls toward air that has learned a new word. Return. There will be more planes. There will be more crates. There will be men who say delay and others who say deny. Let them. Because the folders are signed, the orders are live, the roads are watched. The people are awake. And somewhere between a bank vault and a village square, wealth is changing its address. We will pick it up there, where the night carries more than darkness and the morning carries more than light, where trucks move under guard and a nation stands at the window, hands on the sill, ready to count what finally comes home. Midnight arrives on quiet feet. Engines hum. Runway lights hold their breath. A cargo door rises. A crate rolls forward with a seal that once meant silence. Another follows, then another. By the hour's end, a dozen planes have kissed the tarmac, and the night has learned a new word. Return. Soldiers count in low voices. Clerks stamp without flourish. Every crate is weighed, tagged, logged. No speeches, no anthem, only discipline. On a ridge beyond the fence, people from the nearby villages stand without signs. Teachers in worn shoes, farmers with red dust on their hems, elders with hands on their canes and their hearts. Children pointing at the silver bellies of the planes, whispering the way children do when they sense a miracle but do not know its name. Is it ours? A girl asks her grandmother. It always was, the grandmother says. In the capital, the command room is a pool of steady light. Ibrahim Traoré watches a split screen. Convoy routes, gate logs, the chain of custody in neat blocks that will outlast rumor. He does not smile, he does not frown, he keeps time with the work. Judge Sira reads each receipt before she sets it down. Photograph the seals intact, she says, then photograph them broken, twice. A clerk nods, already moving. Idrissa updates the ledger titled Returned. He runs a finger down the column and halts on a number that used to be a wish. He writes 2 words beside it. Hospitals. Water. Captain Malik stands by the radio, voice low, calm as a held breath. Convoy 1 clear. Convoy 2 at the crossroads. No deviations. He turns to a map where red pins have started to look less like wounds and more like stitches. In Geneva, a woman who signed her affidavit that morning sits by a window she never noticed before. The river moves like an answer. Her phone vibrates once. A message from Judge Sira. Received, safe. She lets the air out of her lungs as if it has been rent-controlled inside her for years. Back at the airstrip, a sergeant opens a crate and finds the shine that mocks the moon. He does not touch it. He writes a number. He signs his name like a man planting a flag. On the ridge, Binta watches with the stillness of a teacher during a spelling test. She thinks of the garden and the way she told the children to leave air between the roots. Tonight the nation is breathing between its own ribs. A boy with a blanket around his shoulders stands beside her, one of the 3 survivors who came out of that painted lie they called a charity. He grips a cloth bag. Inside are the stones he once thought could buy his sister back. Do you still carry them? Binta asks. I do, he says. But now I carry them for weight. He looks at the runway. So the wind can't take me. Binta nods. The wind won't, she says. Not tonight. Across the ocean, screens glow in rooms where the diaspora keeps old promises. In Detroit, a grandmother leans forward in her chair and says, count slow. In Atlanta, a barber pauses his clippers and whispers, bring it home. In Baltimore, a deacon texts a single line to the church thread, we are watching. At the southern checkpoint, a convoy idles as villagers gather with flashlights and old motorbikes. No one is ordered to be there. They form a human convoy behind the trucks, 2 and 3 wide, as if their feet can add something the engines cannot. A woman starts a rhythm with her palms, soft, certain. Those around her answer with the simplest call there is. Who owns the ground? The people. Who keeps the gold? The people. Who writes the ledger? The people. The line moves, the night listens. In the command room, a courier lays a sealed envelope on the table. Judge Sira breaks it and reads a single paragraph. She passes it to Traoré without a word. He reads it and nods once. A foreign authority has agreed to facilitate repatriation under court supervision. We keep the door open, he says, but we keep the lock. Idrissa taps the page with a pencil. We put the first funds where the first pain is, he says. Clinics, teacher pay, clean wells. Begin the list, Traoré says. Public, line by line. At the airstrip, the last crate of the hour rolls into a truck bed. A mechanic wipes his hands on a rag and laughs one soft breath that sounds like a decades-late joke finally landing. He looks up at the sky and says, "You see that to no one and everyone." The convoy picks its way onto a road that knows every crack and story. The villagers on the ridge do not cheer. They raise their hands, palms out the way. People bless a child who is leaving for a long journey. It is not noise. It is witness. Binta closes her eyes and speaks to the brother who sent the letter. "You were right," she says. "Paper can carry a nation." At the palace gate, the first trucks arrive at dawn. Not a parade, a procession. Guards check seals. Clerks count. Photographers frame proof that will stand in court and in classrooms. Traoré steps out into the morning and places his palm on the cool metal side of the lead truck. He does not speak. He does not pose. He stands as if taking attendance. Judge Sira signs the intake forms with the same hand she uses to write her grandmother's recipes. Malik hands a final log to a clerk who will file it in a cabinet that used to hold nothing that mattered. Idrissa draws 3 boxes on a whiteboard. Hospitals, schools, water. He does not erase them. He underlines them twice. A bell in the old quarter rings for prayer. Another rings for class. A third, no bell at all, only a street waking up rings for work that finally feels like building instead of patching. In a newsroom, an editor types a headline that will age well. "The night the gold came home." He deletes one word and replaces it. Hour. On the ridge, the boy loosens his grip on the cloth bag. He takes out one stone and sets it on the ground. He looks lighter by the weight of a pebble and the length of a future. Binta touches the yellow folder through the satchel and feels how thin it is for what it carries. She whispers the sentence she copied in her neat hand. "We were never poor. We were robbed." Then she adds a new one for the children who will ask. "And now we are returning what was taken." The sun climbs. The last truck turns the corner. The ridge empties slowly like a church after a good service. People walk home in pairs and trios, talking softly, saving their voices for the work to come. In the command room, a clerk pins a final note to the board. Phase 1 complete. Traoré looks at the map. The red pins do not look like wounds anymore. They look like stitching that held while the body healed. Phase 2, he says. Judge Sira nods. Law into policy. Idrissa nods. Numbers into lives. Malik nods. Security into trust. Binta nods last, though no one has asked her for a vote. Stories into stone, she says. That is where we lift our eyes to the next hill. Because gold is only the first line on the receipt. Dignity is the balance due, and the country is ready to write it into law. Morning comes honest. A long table, plain wood, no velvet ropes, no gold pens, just paper and a promise. Judge Sira reads the final line aloud. Article 27, A. Natural resources beneath our soil belong to the people. Not to the presidency, not to foreign companies, not to ministers. The people. Ibrahim Traoré signs. The ink dries the way a drought ends quiet, then everywhere. Outside there is no parade. There is witness. Teachers, miners, nurses still in their scrubs. Elders with canes that have heard more history than most books. They lean forward as if to hear the paper itself. Traoré steps onto a small stone platform. He lifts the parchment for all to see. From this day, he says, we will not trade our silence for money. We will trade our resources for dignity. In the open, with the people watching, no chant, just a deep exhale that sounds like a country putting its shoulders down. The work begins in public. Idrissa writes 3 headings on a board where anyone can walk up and read them. Hospitals, schools, water. Under each heading a list: region, cost, timeline, contact name. A phone number that rings on a real desk where a real clerk will answer. Receipts go on a wall, not hidden in a cloud. Paper, thumbtacks, dates, signatures. A child on a field trip can point to a line and say, "That clinic is ours," in October. Every Friday, the press room turns into the people's roll call. Not speeches, ledgers. Project A, dispersed. Project B, delayed. Reason, weather, contractor replaced. New deadline. When a delay happens, it is said out loud. When a lie tries to happen, it dies in daylight. Captain Malik takes his pins off the old crisis map. He brings a new map, not of seizures, of protection. "This corridor stays clean," he says. "This district gets extra patrols at night. We are guarding budgets now." Binta arrives at the village square with a satchel that looks smaller every week. A truck pulls in with a slab of red granite. Children brush the dust away with their hands. A mason kneels and carves slow. "We are the soil." And the soil remembers. No bronze statue, no marble hero, just a sentence you can read on your way to market. A woman in a blue dress wipes her eyes and smiles. "I will bring my granddaughter here after church," she says, so she can touch the words. Across the capital, a modest wing opens at the National Museum. No corporate plaque. A room the color of earth. In the center under glass rests the yellow folder. Frayed string, soft corners. Next to it, a wooden sign in a teacher's hand. One woman, one letter, one nation returned to itself. Visitors move quietly. They look at the folder as if it is breathing. A boy asks Binta, "Is that the real one?" She nods. "Be careful with your voice," she whispers. "You are in a room where truth sleeps light." Diaspora voices rise like a tide you can hear across time zones. In Detroit, say the names right. In Atlanta, show the receipts. In Baltimore, we are watching. In New Orleans, make the music honest. In Brooklyn, who owns the ground? The people. A new habit forms. At town halls, the first 5 minutes belong to anyone. A nurse asks about vaccine fridges for rural clinics. A miner asks about safety rails and fair pay. A student asks for a library with books that smell like hope instead of dust. The answers are not perfect. They are recorded. Deadlines grow teeth. Judge Sira posts a schedule for contract reviews. Old deals come up like stones in a field. Some are kept. Many are not. If it cannot stand in daylight, she says it cannot stand at all. A letter arrives from abroad. Not velvet this time. Plain paper. "We will renegotiate," it says. In public, the reply reads, "With citizen oversight," it adds. "Sign here if you mean it." On a Sunday, a choir gathers under the neem tree in Binta's village. No microphones, hymns and hand claps. Between songs, an elder tells the children how their grandparents taught them to plant with space so the roots can breathe. "That is what a constitution is," he says. Space for the people to breathe. In the palace, Traoré walks past a wall of photographs. Rivers like veins. Villages like constellations. He stops at an empty frame and nods to a clerk. "Leave it," he says. "That is for the first hospital we build with clean money." Idrissa publishes the first quarterly report. Page 1 carries a sentence at the top and nothing else. "We were never poor. We were robbed. Now we are repaid." He lists every project, every cost, every contractor, every audit. The last page is blank by design. Room to add. Room to correct. Room to breathe. Captain Malik stands watch where numbers meet roads. He knows that dignity can be stolen in the dark by creeps and corners. He places lights where corners used to be. He trains a unit not just to carry rifles but to carry notebooks. "Write it down," he says. "Write everything down." Binta returns to her classroom. New chalk, a repaired roof, a lock that works. She opens a fresh copybook and writes the day's lesson. Freedom is a ledger you can read. The children practice the words out loud. They sound like a choir learning a new song that somehow feels old. That evening the square fills without a call. No stage, no banner, just people. A drummer finds a slow, steady pulse. Someone starts the chant that has become a promise. Who owns the ground? The people. Who writes the law? The people. Who counts the children? The people. Who keeps the gold? The people. A breeze moves through the crowd. It smells like dust and mango and work, not a festival. A beginning. In a quiet office, Judge Sira folds the signed amendment and places it in a simple frame. She sets it on a shelf next to her grandmother's recipe book. 2 ways to feed a nation. 1 for the body, 1 for the soul. And somewhere in a city of glass, a man in a suit reads the new rules and does a calculation he has never done before. The margin on honesty. He closes his laptop and looks at his reflection in the window. For once, it does not answer him back. We stop here with a law on paper and a sentence in stone, with a folder under glass and budgets on walls, with the people counting out loud so no one can lose count on their behalf. The next and final chapter will not be about money at all. It will be about memory and how a country learns to keep it. The first clinic opens on a Tuesday, the kind of day history likes to borrow because no one guards it. Fresh paint, clean floors, a fridge that hums like a promise. A nurse signs for supplies with a pen that does not shake. Outside, women wait with babies and a boy in a school sweater holds the door without being asked. The first well runs on a Thursday. The water rises clear enough to mirror faces that have not seen themselves this way in years. A girl cups both hands and drinks like she's learning a new word. Her grandmother laughs and says, "Spell it." The girl says, "Home." The first teacher pay raise posts on a Friday. Not a rumor, a number. Binta stands in her doorway with a ledger and a smile that uses every line on her face. She buys new chalk. She buys beans for the school lunch pot. She writes a lesson on the board in big, careful letters. Freedom is a ledger you can read. At the museum, the yellow folder rests under glass still as if sleep has finally found it. Visitors slow their steps. They speak softer without being told. A child presses a finger to the glass and asks, "Is it heavy?" The guide says, "Only if you carry it alone." In the square, the stone is cool at dawn. We are the soil, and the soil remembers. People touch the carving the way you touch a name on a headstone, and then they touch their own hearts to finish the sentence. Across the ocean, the diaspora keeps its vigil. In Detroit, a grandmother plays the evening news for the first time in a long time and does not turn the volume down. In Atlanta, a barber keeps a printout of the Friday reports taped to his mirror. In Baltimore, a church announces a scholarship named for the children read aloud on that first night. In New Orleans, a trumpeter writes a tune called Return and plays it slow enough for the city to think. The boy with the cloth bag of stones visits the museum with Binta on a quiet morning. He empties the bag into his palms, counts the pebbles, and then leaves one on the base of the glass case. "For weight," he says. So the story does not drift. He slips the empty bag into his pocket and stands taller by the width of a breath. Judge Sira keeps 2 books on her shelf, the signed amendment and her grandmother's recipes. 1 for the country, she says, 1 for the kitchen. She teaches young lawyers to boil arguments down to what feeds the most people the fastest and to serve them hot, not raw. Idrissa walks into a meeting with a whiteboard that does not blink. Hospitals, schools, water, a new column waits at the right edge. Time. How long did we wait? He asks. How long until the next promise pays? He writes dates under each line. He circles delays in red and writes names beside them not to shame, but to remember who needs help holding the load. Captain Malik switches the guard from crisis to custody. Protect the living, he tells his officers. Protect the records. Protect the wells. Learn the routes that corruption likes to take and stand there first. His men carry notebooks in their breast pockets. They write everything down. A letter arrives from abroad, this time without perfume or a knife. We agree to public terms, it reads. Citizen oversight. Open ledgers. Review in 2 years. The reply is shorter. Sign it where the people can see. They do. On a Sunday, Binta returns to the garden behind the school. The children plant cassava in neat rows. Leave space between the stems, she says, because even roots need room to breathe. She pauses and looks at their small hands in the soil. That is what a constitution is, she adds. Room for us to breathe. She takes out a clean page and writes a sentence for them to copy. We were never poor. We were robbed. Now we are repaid and responsible. They practice the words, stumbling on responsible, then getting it right letter by letter the way a country learns to speak its own name without apology. In a narrow office with one window, Ibrahim Traoré stands before a map of the country. Rivers like veins, villages like constellations. He places a pin where the first clinic opened, another where the first well rose, another where a school roof no longer leaks. He does not pin his own name anywhere. He knows his name will pass. The work must not. At dusk, the square fills of its own accord. No banner, no stage, just people. A drum finds that steady heartbeat again. An elder raises his hand and begins the call. The crowd answers not louder than last time, just deeper. Who owns the ground? The people. Who writes the law? The people. Who counts the children? The people. Who keeps the gold? The people. Then the elder asks one more, who keeps the memory a hush? Then the answer from everywhere at once, we do. Binta steps forward with the empty cloth bag folded neat in her palm. She places it on the stone beside the carved words. We will fill this, she says, with receipts and names and dates. So when our children ask, we can show them the weight of what we did and the weight of what we will not let be done again. The crowd murmurs its agreement the way waves agree with the shore. No hurry, no doubt. When the drum fades, people walk home by twos and threes. Doors close, lamps click off. The night takes its place without fear. In the quiet, the country hears what countries almost never get to hear itself breathing. This is the part the cameras never catch. The part after the planes and the headlines. The part where dignity stops being a speech and becomes a habit. Papers posted on walls, wells that keep running, a clinic open on a Tuesday, a school roof that does not leak in the rain. The folder sleeps under glass. The stone holds its sentence. The law lives on a page and in a practice, and the memory hours walks from mouth to mouth, from ledger to ledger, until forgetting has nowhere left to hide. One last time for the record, who owns the ground? The people. And if the earth calls our name again, we answer. Family, if this story moved, you don't let it end here. Subscribe to Spirit of Africa. Hit subscribe. Turn on the bell. Every week we bring you voices, receipts, and truth from the motherland and the diaspora. Leave a comment that says, we keep the memory. Share this with one elder and one student, because stories live longer when we pass them on. Who owns the ground? The people. Say it and click. Subscribe to Spirit of Africa.